Okay, seventh wave. The next chapter is Sonic the Comic, which introduces the evil version of Super Sonic, which becomes separated from Sonic himself. And this evil version of Sonic has like swivels in his eyes and claws and stuff. And I think he's called Fleetway Sonic. At least that's what the fans call him. And he became quite popular in the UK version of the Sonic the Comic. Pretty cool stuff. It's part of the timeline. And the next chapter I'm going to say is this other Sonic the Comic. It's another issue that takes place after, where Fleetway Sonic also returns. So there you go. And I think this is 1997, I believe. So the next chapter I'm going to say is the game for the Sega Saturn, Sonic R. Great game, by the way. And also, of course, Sonic R has Metal Knuckles, or Mecha Knuckles, and Tails doll. And it is 1997, so it's fitting that it's here in the timeline. Because just like how Sonic and the gang fought each other, well, now they're racing each other. So that makes sense. It's all for a particular reason somewhere. Like, you can say that there's a storyline there. It's not just them just fooling around, you know. Because Sonic was always more serious than Mario, you know. It's not like in Mario where they're doing Mario Party and they're racing each other because they just want to do it for fun or some stupid shit. No, this is Sonic. This is more serious. I love Mario, by the way, but I'm just saying, these are just examples of how Sonic is... The people that worked on Sonic back in the day, they took Sonic more seriously as a series. Okay, so the next chapter is this Sonic UK comic where Sonic fights Mecha Knuckles, which is also, you know, from 97. I'm saying it takes place after Sonic R because Sonic sees Mecha Knuckles again in Sonic R and races against him. And now in the next chapter, he's fighting against him. Mecha Knuckles being here is the real main reason why. It fits in right after Sonic R because Mecha Knuckles is in both things. And this is 97, so why not? So the next chapter I'm going to say is a Sonic UK comic where the Chaotix return and Sonic is with them. So yes, even though it's not the early 90s anymore, the Chaotix are still alive. They're still being utilized. They're still in the storylines. Sonic still runs into them every now and then. That's why it's important to mention every time the Chaotix show up because, you know, they're important. Wave 8. We have the Endgame comic series. I think it had 5 parts or something. And these comics in particular was where in 1997 they were starting to get really intense. And they were making it darker, and they made it seem like Sally almost dies, and Sonic's running for his life, and it seems like Robotnik's really winning. Like he's really gonna destroy Mobius and create Robotropolis, and that's why it's called Endgame, and it was so just effing great. And it's, you know, a tragic, important storyline in the saga of Sonic the Hedgehog, so it should be mentioned here in the timeline, even though it's not in a game. So next chapter we have 1998. We have the return of this character called Exus, and I can't pronounce his name, of course. But he's this cool, like, I don't know, goblin wizard-esque character. And it's this character that returns, and he first appeared in Sat AM, actually, back in the early 90s. So here he is returning in the Sonic Archie comics in 1998, all these years later. So they still remember characters that were a threat to them years in years past. So this is the return of Exus, or whatever. Next chapter, we now enter 1999, right? Okay, one of Sonic's greatest years as a game character. We have an issue of Sonic the Comic where Fleetway Sonic returns. Super Sonic's back with a bang. So, again, they're showing how Fleetway Sonic is a character that is returning. He's part of the storyline. A year prior, he was running around fighting Sonic and stuff. Or a year or two before, whatever. Next chapter, 1999, Sonic the UK comic. It's an issue where Fang the Sniper appears on the front cover. So, once again, Fang is still around. Very cool. Even though it's 1999 and this is like we're gearing up for Sonic Adventure, right? Yeah, it's surprising. Like, Fang is still here. Like, just because Fang is not in the later games doesn't mean that Fang is not part of the Sonic story. I just want to mention that. That's why it's important to mention this comic in particular. That Fang is still around, the Chaotix are still around, all this stuff. Okay, so next chapter I'm going to say is Sonic the Comic UK, and he's with the Chaotix once again. You got Mighty there with Sonic and SBO, Charmy the Bee, all that good stuff. 1999, once again, establishing Chaotix are important, and they're still around. Wave 9. This is very important right here, guys. So this is a Sonic the Comic, UK comic, and it's from the year 2000, but it takes place before Sonic Adventure 1, though, because it explains how Sonic gets his green eyes. It explains how, this is gearing up for Sonic Adventure. So, since this shows us how Sonic gets his green eyes for the first time, it has to take place before Sonic Adventure. So, even though this comic was published in 2000, and Sonic Adventure takes place in 1999, it doesn't matter, because it explains Sonic's green eyes, how it got there. So this takes place first. Next chapter I'm going to say is this Sonic Archie comic, and I think it's from the year 2000 or something. And it says, Dr. Robotnik returns. Now this is where it starts getting a little confusing about Robotnik, Eggman, and how we were all confused when we were kids and how we were teenagers. And like if you grew up in the United States, his name was always Dr. Robotnik, but in Japan his name was always Dr. Eggman. But this is important to mention here because eventually we're going to get into Sonic Adventure 2 where he's just called Eggman from now on. So this is important. And it's establishing more storyline stuff in the Archie comics where it's Dr. Robotnik returns. And even in Sonic Adventure 1, Robotnik calls himself Dr. Robotnik, so he's still Dr. Robotnik. So the next chapter after that Archie comic in particular, I'm going to say is actually the pilot episode of Sonic X. Yes, before the events of Sonic X, the beginning of Sonic X actually takes place right before Sonic Adventure happens. Why? Because the pilot explains how all the Sonic characters wind up on planet Earth. Because if I can recall correctly, they travel in like a dimension and it brings them to Earth, to the Earth dimension. Whereas before that, they were all on planet Mobius. Maybe they don't call it planet Mobius in the pilot, but that's really where they all are. So they all got transported there. Knuckles, Tails, Rouge, Sonic, Eggman, And that's why it's important to mention here, because this pilot of Sonic X explains why they're even on Earth in Sonic Adventure. So it takes place before Sonic Adventure. And then the next chapter is the first Archie Sonic comic that is the Sonic Adventure tie-in to the Sonic Adventure Dreamcast title. And the comic shows how you got Amy there, of course. It shows how the Freedom Fighters moved to Earth as well, along with Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Amy, the Fab Four. Sally and the rest of the gang are also now on Earth as well. So this comic establishes that the Freedom Fighters were there in Sonic Adventure, actually. Just because you don't see them in the game doesn't mean that they don't exist there. They exist. They show you that they're there in the comic, which is very cool. So it shows how the comics actually fit in line with the games, at least for the most part. And this comic in particular takes place a little bit before the events kick in of Sonic Adventure. So this is actually like we're nearly there. So it kicks off the Adventure 1 storyline, basically. Wave 10, okay. Next chapter, Sonic Adventure, Sega Dreamcast. The classic. One of the greatest video games of all time. And dare I say, a little underrated these days. So, there you have it. The next chapter I'm going to say is the Archie Sonic comic where Sonic fights Chaos in the rain, which are the events that happen in Sonic Adventure for the Dreamcast. But this Sonic comic in particular adds a little more dialogue, there's a little more detail in the story, and it's also showing that there's more stuff going on in the storyline of Sonic Adventure than the game shows you. It shows how the Freedom Fighters are still there and all this other stuff is actually going on as well. So once again, it's like the comics are like the expanded storyline version of the games. Yeah, anyway. So the next chapter is another issue of Archie Sonic, of Sonic Adventure tie-in. You got Big the Cat on there. Perfect. The next chapter, we have another Sonic Archie comic with you got Knuckles fighting Chaos. Sonic is there, still part of the Adventure storyline going on where they're all fighting Chaos and everything else. And the Freedom Fighters are still there. And the next chapter, we have the Archie Sonic comic where you see Perfect Chaos right there on the front cover. So now we have Perfect Chaos emerging, and they're getting ready to fight him. So we're at the end of Sonic Adventure 1. The next chapter is the Archie Sonic comic, where you got Super Sonic there, ready to fight, keep fighting Perfect Chaos, still trying to defeat him. You got Knuckles there, right there with Sonic on the front cover. Wave 11, very important. In Sonic Adventure, there is one of the test tubes of Robotnik's lair where there is a black metal Sonic with machine gun hands. He never does anything in the game, and he's very mysterious. So that's really super cool that's there, and everyone always wondered, oh, wow, who is this other metal Sonic, right? We don't get to see him do anything in the game, or even in Sonic Adventure 2, or whatever. But actually, the next chapter is a Sonic Archie comic, issue number 85, which takes place right after Sonic Adventure, okay? It is right after they defeat Perfect Chaos. Sonic actually fights this black, mysterious metal Sonic. Yes, the same metal Sonic that was in Sonic Adventure. Sonic fights him in Station Square, and it's perfect. You know, just when you think Robotnik was totally defeated, he has one thing left up his sleeve, and that is this thing he was working on. And during Sonic Adventure, this extra powerful black metal Sonic character. So Sonic fights him, and it's perfect. I mean, this is amazing, guys. This is them showing something that appears in the game and then expanding it in the comics. Amazing. So then the next chapter after that is a issue number 86 where you got Sonic being like, hey, didn't I beat you last month? And the robot's like, not exactly. Perfect. So Sonic actually didn't totally defeat him the last comic. So this is like the mysterious black robot mecha Sonic storyline saga. And it takes place right after the events of Sonic Adventure. Phenomenal. And this is amazing stuff right here. Wave 12, we have this Archie Sonic comic, which has a tie-in for the storyline of Sonic Shuffle. And then the chapter after this Archie Sonic comic is the game, the Dreamcast game Sonic Shuffle, because now we're in the year 2000. Now, why am I saying the Sonic Shuffle game takes place after the comic? Is because I think this is the only Sonic comic that explains the Sonic Shuffle storyline. And I'm putting the comic before the game because at the end of this comic in particular that I read when I was younger, Sonic, they show him first meeting Illumina and him first entering into Imaginary World with Knuckles, Tails, and Amy. And they all went through the same thing Sonic went through, where you don't know if it's a dream or it's real, and it like blends the lines between dreams and reality. So really, that's why the comic takes place before the game in the timeline, because the comic explains how Sonic got there. And then the next chapter would be the events of the Sonic Shuffle game, where they fight Void and all that kind of stuff. Sonic Shuffle is an underrated game, by the way. Wish there was a Sonic Shuffle 2, and they could have made it a little better.